Hello, my name is Angela Pate, and this is my Extreme Makeover presentation for Organizational and Systems Leadership for the Advanced Practice Nurse. The objective of this presentation is to examine miscommunication in the workplace, factors that lead to these issues, how these conversations and themes affect the workplace environment, how utilizing organization as conversation can be transformational, and methods of communication that can elevate relationships and collaboration within an organization. I will also be discussing issues I have personally experienced in past and current workplace environments due to both miscommunication and faulty methods of communication, what led to these encounters, and what communication alterations in these situations might have gained more positive results. In my first nursing job, I worked one-on-one with a doctor who had been practicing for over 20 years. Being new to the field, I lacked confidence, but had been given a wonderful foundation of both nursing knowledge, best patient care practices, and leadership. Although I was intimidated, my nursing instructors had given me the tools to make the best decisions regarding patient interaction and care. This physician and I had a difficult start in the area of communication. He seemed to think my top priority should always be to do exactly what he asked and follow his authority. However, I had the mindset that the patient always came first, so it was their well-being I was most concerned with. Within my first 2 months on the job, we had many uncomfortable conversations where we disagreed about details in the area of my responsibility to him versus the patient. One day, the conflict peaked. After I left a room with a new patient who had multiple comorbidities and a list of new symptoms, he approached me about being in the room too long discussing patient history and assessment. As I was noting on the chart, he also began yelling at me about charting too much information, that he expected me to be in and out of rooms more quickly and always be available to accompany him into a room as soon as he needed it. At that point, I had to decide if this was the type of environment I wanted to continue to work in. I asked him to accompany me to the large clinic manager's office so we could have a discussion with an objective authority. I explained to this physician that my top priority would always be the patient and that would not only benefit the patient but also his practice. I also explained that me being thorough would protect the clinic as a whole. He explained that he had been accustomed to working in a smaller clinic environment with a medical assistant who he had worked with for many years before me, and that he realized he was set in his ways and old habits. I explained to him and the office manager that if I was going to be expected to not provide thorough patient care, I would have to resign. Both the manager and the physician asked that I consider staying for another 6 months and reevaluate the working relationship at that point. From that moment on, the physician and I worked incredibly well together, and he began to better understand the benefits of more thorough nursing care and the trusting relationships with patients that are formed through it. In the 7 years I worked with him, his practice grew tremendously, and he nearly never had an existing patient leave his care. Even though I have not worked with him in many years, this physician and I still have a wonderful personal relationship. The physician had spent many years working in an environment where an organization was seen more as a machine. He had also spent years seeing doctors as leaders and nurses as a role to fulfill the needs and orders of a physician. To him, there was definitely a clear linear hierarchy of leadership. He saw patients as a task instead of a relationship, and he saw his coworkers as his employees instead of a cohesive team. I was incredibly thankful for this first position and its circumstances because I learned so much. As intimidating as it was to face this as a new nurse, I gained the confidence and ability to stand for what I felt was right regarding how both patients and coworkers were being treated. Through open and honest communication, our clinic became a wonderful place for patients to receive care and for employees to work. Our office became like a family, and although tough conversations still happened, there was an underlying respect for everyone involved that allowed those conversations to lead to solutions. Patient care became priority, and staff felt more open to spend the time with them they needed without fear of repercussion. An environment of trust was established. I have been incredibly blessed that the organization where I have worked for the past 15 years, the majority of conversations have been mission-oriented. The leadership, both board and staff, have strived to have a continuous focus on making decisions that most positively affect the families we serve. The board works well together and easily discusses and resolves difficult topics. The board makes it incredibly easy for staff to communicate with them and is wonderful at listening and responding. However, over the past year with COVID-19 difficulties, the conversations have been fewer and the energy of board, staff, and volunteers has been dramatically affected. There has been a shift in both the conversation and culture. Unfortunately, I think this has been the case in countless organizations the past year. My hope is that circumstances will continue to get better this year and a positive shift in conversation and overall energy and attitude will happen. Davidson states, patterns of meaning are specific things that exist in an organization. For example, an organization's mission and vision serve as a pattern of meaning that informs the collective organizational identity. Our organization's mission is to build a better and brighter future for all those impacted by spina bifida. And our vision is a world where everyone impacted by spina bifida is accepted and thrives. In my organization, this past year's conversations and themes have been much more pessimistic, and the overall organization's mission, vision, and identity have been negatively affected. Instead of feeling purposeful and as though we are able to make a positive difference in our families' lives, we feel as though COVID has caused our families, volunteers, and partners to be less involved. The impact of this has been less mission focus for our board and staff, and a lot of passion and purpose have been lost. Davidson quotes Suchman as saying, patterns of relating, or how people interact with each other, form an organization's culture. Birdsong states that there are 4 I's of organization conversation. Intimacy, where communication is authentic and direct. Interactivity, which is face-to-face direct communication. Inclusion, where staff is included in organizational decisions. And intentionality, where a clear organizational direction and transparency of communication exist. He further goes on to discuss how one-on-one meetings also foster a greater relationship between leaders and their teams. Without having these type of personal interactions, meetings, and conversations, our organization has struggled. Our staff, board, volunteers, and families normally spend a great deal of time together. We host multiple events each year, and they are always well attended. With COVID restrictions, most of our in-person events were canceled last year, including our summer camps. The lack of interaction has certainly taken its toll. Although we have had board meetings per conference call or Zoom, it hasn't been the same. Our meetings have also not been as productive. We have hosted many virtual programs and services for our families, but these events have not been well attended, which has further deflated staff's energy. It is vital for organizational leaders to be both authentic and intentional in their methods of communication. Every interaction within an organization provides an opportunity to benefit or harm the organizational culture. In leadership models of the past, communication was more linear. Leaders had a tendency to talk at employees instead of having an authentic back and forth conversation with them. This led to employees feeling unheard and unmotivated. In a culture of organization as conversation, a complex relational method is most effective. Davidson states, if we take up the complex relational view of organizations, the power to transform our workplace comes from the quality of relationships that we engage in. We are at once formed by and forming the future as we talk about it together. Listening is an even more important skill than speaking in a conversation. For meaningful conversations to occur, people need to feel as though they are being both heard and understood. To build an organizational culture based on conversation, purposeful listening, where participants are completely engaged and present in the conversation, is essential. It is also important that when listening, you not only hear what they are communicating when they speak, but also what their gestures and body language are communicating to fully comprehend the meaning of the conversation. For a conversation to be productive, participants must also be fully present and engaged. Distractions, such as thinking about other things or what you plan to say next, must be avoided. Leaders build more trusting relationships when their team members feel that they are able to have authentic conversations with them. Although my organization is normally extremely authentic and purposeful in communication, this last year's difficulties have led to several communication issues. Not only have the opportunities for communication been limited, but when opportunities have arisen, the conversation has not seemed purposeful, motivational, or collaborative. Themes of conversation have been more negative and centered around survival of the organization instead of brainstorming innovative ways to overcome and thrive. Most people form habits of communication and ways of being that are comfortable for us. Many times, because of these habits, we hold on to old ways of thinking, even when they are no longer beneficial. It is easier when issues arise to fall back on these habits in an effort to gain control of a situation. Davidson states, often our initial reaction, based off our mechanistic and linear ways of thinking, is to simplify, control, and organize. Without innovation, organizations run the risk of becoming stagnant. Also, in times of crisis, they tend to go into survival mode and work to tame the chaos instead of embracing it and brainstorming creative solutions. For an organization to sustain innovation, they need to be open to consistent collaboration with all staff, and staff needs to feel safe to share any and all ideas without ridicule. In the past, my organization has always embraced innovation, encouraged creative thinking, and had consistent collaboration and transparent communication. In fact, our organization's programs and services grew immensely because of an innovative spirit. However, this past year has shifted our innovative spirit. Innovation and creativity have been replaced with stagnation and burnout. Our organization needs to embrace these difficult times as an opportunity to serve more passionately, think more creatively, and use our mission and vision as inspiration to challenge ourselves to overcome. Even when we are not able to spend time with our families, we need to remember the incredible faces of those we serve. These faces and thousands more need to be at the forefront of every conversation and decision we make. Our organization needs to embrace difficulty and overcome with as much grace as our amazing families do. After establishing a more positive perspective on our patterns of meaning, we also need to rethink our current patterns of relating. Instead of giving in to the challenging circumstances and having lackadaisical attitudes, our board and staff need to make a greater effort to meet and collaborate frequently by any means necessary. And we need to continually deliberate strategic ways to serve our families' needs during this time. Our organization needs to return to more effective communication methods, and while doing so, also examine areas where we can become even more productive communicators. By being aware of our words and choosing language intentionally, we can purposefully perpetuate themes and ideology that resonate and are useful to us. Or we can take up new language and new ways of speaking with others that are more authentic and meaningful. Language serves to form and can transform meaning. Organizational leadership needs to make the most of every conversation, working toward moving past the issues we have encountered over the past year and focus on actively hearing and understanding the needs of constituents, staff, and volunteers. They need to provide an example of being engaged, present, and available to face whatever may come. Our organization also needs to view problems that arise as an opportunity for innovative thinking and positive organizational changes. In conclusion, for organizations to create an environment where those they serve receive the highest quality of care and where staff is more productive and content in their work environment, they must adopt an organization as conversation method of leadership. Organizations need to truly embrace their patterns of meaning and let that be the focus of every decision they make. Their mission, values, and vision are priority, and if they are able to establish an overall identity they can be proud of. To facilitate this, it is essential to utilize patterns of relating, such as transparent and authentic conversations, where everyone involved is heard and respected, and where collaboration among team members is consistent and purposeful. An innovative spirit needs to be celebrated, and all team members need to feel comfortable sharing new and creative ideas. Organizations should no longer function as mechanistic and linear, where leadership hierarchy causes staff to feel as though they are just expected to follow orders blindly. Staff should feel like they are an integral part of a cohesive team that works together to benefit those they serve.